We have just entered that early portion of the 2024 offseason where everyone's trying to get their heads on straight again. After a crazy year of fantasy football, we just need to know who our core dynasty pieces are at the wide receiver position. And that could be tough to find year to year, especially when the year is over. So that's why today I am going through the top 20 wide receiver rankings in Dynasty Fantasy Football in the 2024 offseason, guys. And this is a new channel. You can find me on my main channel, Football Fanalysts Network, which is exclusive for fantasy football redraft and best ball. You can find me on that channel. Like and subscribe to that channel, but make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and you support what I do here. So let's go ahead, dive right into these rankings right now. So number 1 and 2, they really haven't changed for me. Number 1 and 2, I think Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are still here. I think that Justin Jefferson, when you look at what happened last year, it was just a series of unfortunate events. Number 1, Kirk Cousins goes down, and they have to deal with Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins and whoever else they threw out there. I mean, they threw so many guys out there, it was ridiculous, right? And Justin Jefferson, not only did that happen, he went down with an injury himself and missed a good portion of the middle part of the season. So Justin Jefferson just had a lot of unfortunate things going on, but look at the screen. He almost averaged 17 fantasy points per game with all of that. And here's the argument that I'll make is that Kirk Cousins very well may be not the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings in 2024. If he is, though, just remember what he was able to do. I don't think Kirk Cousins is a great NFL quarterback, but for dynasty purposes, this guy could put up 400 yards a game. Josh Dobbs, all those other guys, 260 max. That makes a big difference. A massive difference. So Justin Jefferson to me is not going anywhere. And at number 2, I've got Jamar still one spot over CeeDee Lamb. Now I want to make it clear, they're very close. They're very, very close to each other. Jamar Chase, the reason I still have him over there is because of the Joe Burrow factor. There's more stability with the Cincinnati Bengals right now. And I think that, listen, you've got your quarterback locked up, and I don't think that anybody really questions whether Joe Burrow is an elite quarterback. And I don't also think that anybody questions whether Jamar Chase is an elite wide receiver or not. Jamar Chase had a little bit of a down year without Joe Burrow for the back half. But the same thing held true. Jamar Chase is still capable of a big game. 30 points without Joe Burrow. He was capable of it. The problem I have with CeeDee Lamb, and the reason I've got Jamar one spot above him, is a stability thing. Look, the Dallas Cowboys, as of the time of this filming, went down not only in the first round of the playoffs, embarrassingly, in an embarrassing fashion. Whether it's Dak Prescott or Mike McCarthy who goes, someone's going. Someone's got to go. And by the time you're watching this, they may have already made a move. But one of them is going to go. I'm leaning towards it being Mike McCarthy, but I don't think that it's out of the question it could be Dak. Either way, there's going to be a change in this offense in 2024. That's what worries me a little bit because CeeDee Lamb, I love the player. I think he's an elite wide receiver. I've been saying that for years. But I do worry about the quarterback situation because there's times where Dak goes cold. And I do worry about what happens with the Cowboys next year. So I think Dak is still good enough to support CeeDee Lamb. I think he's great at supporting CeeDee Lamb for a wide receiver one finish in fantasy as he did. But I do worry about the direction of the Dallas Cowboys. At number 4, I've got A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown here at number 4 is just... I really don't think that A.J. Brown can move too far for me, even though he is getting closer to 30, and the Eagles had a historic collapse. Like, it was embarrassing how much the Eagles collapsed. Jalen Hurts looked just worse and worse every game, and the Eagles as a team looked worse and worse every game. And by the way, I was just talking about with the Cowboys, I would not be surprised if by the time you're watching this, there's a change in Philadelphia as well. I think they're both in the Bill Belichick sweepstakes. A.J. Brown, it really comes down to me believing in a player, and it also comes down to me believing in a quarterback. I believe in A.J. Brown, the player. I think he's elite. I think that you look at the first half of the 2023 fantasy season, and he was excellent. I also think that if you look at Jalen Hurts last year and the first half of 2023, he was also elite. Jalen Hurts, I still think is a very good quarterback. I think they've got things to work out. But A.J. Brown, still, I prefer him at number 4. Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 5 and 6. Garrett Wilson, the only reason he's above Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I think it probably sounds crazy to some people. I think it may sound crazy. The reason I have Garrett Wilson one spot above him is because, number one, I think Garrett Wilson is a better receiver. I do, and that's no slight at all to Amon-Ra. I think Garrett Wilson's elite, and we haven't even seen the elite ceiling yet in fantasy football. I think that even if it's just 1 year with Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson can be a top 5 wide receiver easily. I think easily top 3. Garrett Wilson, I still prefer to have him in Dynasty because he's still so young. So if he decides when he becomes a free agent that he wants to walk away from the dysfunction of New York, by that time Aaron Rodgers will have probably retired, and Garrett Wilson could go find a different team. I think Garrett Wilson's a great option, but it's, again, no slight at all to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look at the numbers he put up in 2023. They were unbelievable in fantasy. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's got a much more stable situation in Detroit with Jared Goff, Dan Campbell. I think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. I don't want to rag on the guy because I've got nothing bad to say on him. I just prefer Garrett Wilson. At number 7, a lot of people may think this is too early. To be honest with you, I don't. I've got Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 7 as the 7th best wide receiver in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Marvin Harrison Jr. is such an elite prospect. And I realized that I said this same thing about Jackson Smith-Njigba just 1 year ago on my main channel, Football Fanalysts Network. I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. I love Marvin Harrison Jr. They're both Ohio State products. I've got to think for Ohio State wide receivers. I think they make them elite over there. Marvin Harrison Jr., for the last 2 years in college, over 1,200 receiving yards, and was in the Heisman contention this year. Marvin Harrison Jr., son of Hall of Fame wide receiver Marvin Harrison Sr., was elite in both of his last 2 college seasons. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is just an elite player through and through. I think that he is not only got the physical attributes that are better than his father, I think that he has got the route running of his father, the separation skills of his father. He can go deep. He can go over the middle. He can go underneath. He's good after the catch. He's got everything you want in a wide receiver in fantasy football, and you'll see just how much I love him when my 2024 Dynasty Rookie Prospect Battle comes out later in the offseason, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you catch the release of the 2024 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. At number 8 and 9, I've got Tyreek Hill one spot above Olave. I think that Tyreek Hill obviously he's a ticking time bomb. He even came out and said he's going to play a couple more years, and that's it. I think it's 2 more years now he said he was going to play. So we've got 2 more years of elite play. That's the way I look at it. Because this guy has not slowed down. He has not slowed down at all in fantasy football. The numbers on the screen, totally elite. Almost 20 fantasy points per game, over 100 yards receiving per game, and 13 touchdowns. That's just elite production. So if I get 2 more years of elite production like that from a guy who's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I'll take that over a guy who I like in Chris Olave, but I think just has way more question marks. What about his quarterback? What about his offense? What about his coach? Chris Olave's got a lot of issues that are outside of his control. And by the way, I got flack for this during the season. Chris Olave was not perfect in 2023. He looked lost a lot of times on routes. Now, maybe that's primarily because Derek Carr was confusing. I don't care. That was just the reality of what our eyes saw on camera. That's not acceptable. So Chris Olave while I do think that he's a very good dynasty receiver, I'll take 2 years of excellence over hoping that Olave can reach a top 10 to 5 ceiling. At number 10, Nico Collins, one spot over Jalen Waddle. Nico Collins is one of the biggest risers in all of Dynasty. Nico Collins is in a perfect situation. Nico Collins heading into his 4th year as a Houston Texan. So basically about to go into a contract year. Wouldn't be surprised if they go early, jump the gun, sign him this offseason so they can get it for cheaper. Because if he plays like he did last year in 2024, that's going to be an expensive guy. Nico Collins also has what I think most people agree is a top 10 quarterback in the league already. CJ Stroud and Nico Collins showed lots of work. The only reason I didn't put Nico a little bit higher actually is because I still don't know whether or not he prefers Tank Dell or Nico Collins. They're both great. I think they're both great options. But Nico Collins is the guy I prefer because he's more of a prototypical X receiver that I think will last longer in this league, and that is great for Dynasty Fantasy Football. And Jalen Waddle at 11, I think that Jalen Waddle is just simply in a situation where he's an elite number 2 in fantasy football. And I think that as long as Tyreek Hill is there, I actually think he's better off. I don't think that Jalen Waddle is going to produce as well when he's the number 1. I'll probably get flack for saying that. But I really don't think that's the case. I think he's better off as a number 2. I think he's a better Robin than he is a Batman. And you could see it this year. Jalen Waddle's numbers weren't that great. Jalen Waddle disappointed a lot of people, including myself. So I was not impressed with Jalen Waddle. I think he could be very good, but I want to see much more from him in the coming years. Devonta Smith and T. Higgins at 12 and 13. Devonta Smith, I prefer over T because I as I said with A.J. Brown, I still prefer the quarterback. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he's a very good player. I think he will be very good. I think they just need to figure some things out. And Devonta Smith, regardless of if A.J. Brown is there or not, I think he's a great player. I think Devonta Smith is a top-tier wide receiver. The only thing that really I'm uncertain about is there's a lot of times where Devonta Smith goes cold because A.J. Brown's hogging targets. That's a problem. That is a problem. T. Higgins, I think it's just the time that everyone's been waiting for. T. Higgins will not be a Bengal in 2024. There's an outside shot of it because he had a down year that they might just tag him. But I think T. Higgins walks in 2024. And even if he's a Bengal next year, he probably won't be in 2025. So T. Higgins, to me, I think once he's able to walk, is a wide receiver 1 for somebody. And I think that T. Higgins belongs as a top 13 wide receiver in Dynasty. Number 14. Actually, 14, 15, 16, 17, all rookies. We'll go 2 at a time. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Puka Nacua, Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I said it earlier in the video. I've been all over Jackson Smith-Njigba since 2021. I have loved the player so much. I think he's up to Marvin Harrison, one of the best wide receiver prospects I've seen since Jamar Chase. I think in order, it goes as prospects, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. Got lots of love. And I think that one of the reasons I like him more than Puka is because I think they both have a little bit of uncertainty to them. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba was clearly not nearly as great of a player in fantasy in his first year as Puka was. Not taking that away from Puka. And I love Puka too. I have more question marks with the quarterback because Seattle's quarterback, they're doing something. Pete Carroll is now gone. They're going to move forward with this franchise because they've got all kinds of talent. And Jackson Smith-Njigba was coming on as the clear number 2 in that offense. So I think that Jackson Smith-Njigba gets a new quarterback that's got to be better than Geno. And I think that Puka, while I think Matt Stafford is still a very good quarterback, how many more years does he have left? And once he goes, that worries me for Puka. I love Puka. I love Jackson Jigba. Don't take it as a slight, me having JSN one spot over Puka. Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, 16 and 17. I think it simply comes down to the fact that Jordan Addison is just in a higher octane offense for passing volume. I think it's just as simple as that. Jordan Addison is just in an offense that currently has a quarterback that can throw for over 400 yards a game, and their offensive-minded head coach wants to throw the ball on a consistent basis. I think Lamar Jackson's a better quarterback in real life than Kirk Cousins. But I don't think that numbers prove this. He's not as consistently throwing for over 300, 400 yards as Kirk Cousins is. So there's just not as much consistency there for a Ravens wide receiver as much as there is for a Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. But with Zay Flowers' age, the prowess he showed in his first year, the team he's on, clearly a top 20 Dynasty wide receiver. And as you can see, those numbers are totally off. This is what Zay Flowers' real numbers were in 2023. 108 targets, 858 receiving yards. Again, part of my problem. 11.1 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns in 16 games played for 10.5 fantasy points per game in half PPR. So that's part of my problem, as I said. Not as much consistency, but I do think that the ceiling will only continue to grow through overtime. Brandon Aiyuk and Michael Pittman at 18 and 19. Brandon Aiyuk simply is just in a situation where there's some uncertainty there. Brandon Aiyuk, young, check. I like that. Brandon Aiyuk coming off a breakout season. Massive season in fantasy football. But Brandon Aiyuk also going into his 4th year. So how much longer is he a 49er? That's up for debate. Because they're about that team's going to get expensive really fast. So can they hold on to him? Is it a T. Higgins situation? I don't know. Maybe they let go to Debo. I don't know. I think Brandon Aiyuk is still a very good dynasty option because he's young. This guy is coming off a great year, and he's on an elite offense. So Brandon Aiyuk, one spot over Michael Pittman, but let me make this clear. Michael Pittman's a massive riser for me. I was actually never that big of a fan of Pittman. I always thought he was a little overrated as a player. Michael Pittman not only proved to be a very good wide receiver this year, in my opinion, the main reason I love him so much is because I absolutely love the offense. I absolutely love the coach he plays for. The coach is elite. Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia when Jalen Hurts blew up. Shane Steichen's the real deal. He almost took this team to the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. Now they get Anthony Richardson back in 2024. Michael Pittman puts those numbers up with Gardner Minshew. They're signing Michael Pittman Jr. back to this team. He fits so well in Shane Steichen's offense. I actually think Pittman has a very bright future in Indianapolis. And DJ Moore at number 20, rounding it out. Now, DJ Moore's a little bit worrisome to me. In fact, there was a lot of guys I was considering going with here. I think that DJ Moore is just in a situation where you can't ignore the production he put up in 2023. He was excellent. Several massive boom games, 50 plus, 40 plus, 30 plus games. DJ Moore did that. The problem is, who's the quarterback? As of the time of this filming, we don't know. I would actually lean on the side that Justin Fields is not the guy that they go with. And if Caleb Williams is the guy, I actually don't think that necessarily means great things for DJ Moore in year 1. In Dynasty, I think that his value stays pretty safe because I do think whether it's Justin Fields or Caleb Williams, I think that DJ Moore will continue to produce very top tier fantasy elite production for the next 5 to 6 years. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for your Dynasty fantasy football season. And if you're new to Dynasty and don't even know what I'm talking about right now, and you need a lesson in how Dynasty fantasy football works, click on this video to get a lesson on how Dynasty works.